All right, everybody. Welcome back to another exciting episode of our podcast, Essence of Alexandria. I'm your host, John, and I'm joined by my co-host, the wonderful, magnificent Megan.
So, guys.
She gets an extra adjective today. Um, she's wonderful and magnificent. Uh, so for today's topic, couple. I guess one thing we're changing it to just a single topic structure because this is a weekend podcast that we record for funsies. Uh, So trying to research two topics every week is a lot. So we're going to switch that to just one topic. And the topic this week uh, is one that I dread. And this is going to be the podcast that eventually gets us canceled one day, maybe. But we're talking about race in America. You know, that exciting and fun can of worms. But before we open it, uh, please, if you're on YouTube or Rumble, like and comment and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. YouTube algorithms are very particular about these things. I know it's kind of annoying for this to be up front, but if it's not, it kind of the robots at YouTube just get angry and don't promote your content as much. So please help us out. We're doing this for fun, but if it goes anywhere, we'd really like to uh, I don't know. I guess maybe turn this into something a little more serious. But yes, thank you guys so much for listening. And then we're going to get on our way to the topic when I stop rambling.
You're not rambling. Um, yeah, I think this is one before before we really jump into it. I wanted to say real quick for our listeners that this subject is often one that's approached with a lot of emotion, and I think that John and I both really wanted to make sure to come at
Mm-hmm.
it from a logical, analytical place because at the end of the day, you're never going to reach a truly positive outcome if all you're doing is basing your line of thinking off of emotion. And I know that I have anecdotal stories. I'm sure that John has anecdotal stories. I'm sure that there's a lot of people on both sides of the aisle, white, black, Hispanic, everything, have anecdotal evidence as to the the problem of race in America. But um, I wanted to quote Thomas Sowell from his book Intellectuals and Race that the uncritical use of statistics risks many pitfalls. The very definitions used with statistical data create traps for the unwary. And what he basically means from this is that what he terms the intelligentsia, or the intellectuals that choose what to acknowledge and not acknowledge at their own whim and present it to the populace at large, will utilize their minds and the way they use their words to manipulate everyone to do exactly as they please. And so if you're watching the news or if you're looking at these news articles and magazines or whatever else, that everyone should approach them cautiously because those people who are writing them, those people who are presenting them are doing it in a very specific way because they want to keep people under control. They want to keep people doing certain things in order so that they can stay at the top. And that's been stated by many. But I want, I firmly believe that's the truth because we have seen race relations deteriorate. I I see it ever since the 90s. I think that since the 90s, we've seen rapid race relations deteriorate. And I think it's just something that we really, if we want to create a future that is better, we all have to stop having that cognitive dissonance. So that was a little disclaimer before we really jump into the meat of everything, honestly, because I
Mm-hmm.
want people to understand we're not coming at it. I don't. I'm not coming at it race biased. I'm really not. Like I think that there's plenty of white people who are racist, and I think there's plenty of black people who are racist.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe in reverse racism. I don't believe in any of those other buzzwords or nonsense. Racism is racism.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I just wanted to clear the air before we get into it.
I also think racism is bad. Racism is in fact fake and gay. Um, I think really the only way to judge a person is just by their moral character. Um,
Oh, like Martin Luther King Jr. said,
yeah, something like that by the
know
content
the
or
character.
character. Uh, the problem with that is a lot of people get upset when you say that. They don't like being judged by their moral character because they don't have a good moral character. And then you say, "Oh, I judge by moral character," and they're like, "But what about these statistics here? I got these handy dandy hits paper FBI
That's
statistics."
oh yeah, it's confirmation bias. You
Yeah.
know, they look for things to be able
Mm-hmm.
to validate their opinion because moral character is harder to work on than just skin color. It's
Yeah.
harder. You know,
Yeah. No, virtue. One of the things I've learned, and I think we've talked about this in the past a little bit, is that virtue, um, it's learned. Like you don't start out this humble, selfless, loving, strong person. Like that comes through practice. You have to practice these things. Um, and, you can talk about socioeconomic reasons why certain groups might be less practiced at virtue than others. But at the end of the day, it's the individual's responsibility to be virtuous. And I'm also, that's just personally, that's how I judge you. I don't care if you're black, white, Asian, Hispanic, African, whatever. You just, if you're a good person, you're a good person.
but John, that's race blindness. You
Yeah.
can't do that.
Yeah, bummer. I guess I gotta go get LASIK. I gotta go get race LASIK.
Yeah, race LASIK, just like special glasses. I'm sorry, it's not a joke. Sorry. I hate I hated that. Like I hate
Mm-hmm.
because what was it? That was a lot of. I think it was the same time
Mm-hmm.
as the All Lives Matter movement when it came out. Right shortly after Black Lives Matter, it was like the All Lives Matter movement too. And when
Mm-hmm.
that came out, it was like, oh, race blindness. You can't be race blind. And it's like, but yes, you can. Like again, I mean, sure. Is a black person's upbringing necessarily going to be the same as a white person's upbringing? Maybe not, but somewhere out there is a white person who probably grew up in a very similar situation as a black person. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so like all the white kids who've grown up in urban cities that are low income, socioeconomically, what for some reason their battles and their struggles are different than a black kid's. I, I've never understood that. Like
Mm-hmm.
the whole white privilege card nonsense. It's like, what? Wait, what white privilege card nonsense? Um, and I like so in my research, one of the big things, of course, was they were talking about
Who's
credit
they for
score.
the audience?
Sorry, yeah, yeah. So like I saw an article. Apologize for that. CNBC actually did an article in regards to why young adults in minority communities tend to start out with lower credit scores. And if you read the article, they talk about uh, factors about how they are less likely to get like mortgage loans or good mortgage rates, etc. Um, and the and I found I don't know if it was a Freudian slip, but I'm pretty sure somewhere in this article they very specifically said, oh, the article keeps resetting on me. I do apologize. Credit scores are determined by factors including a borrower's current unpaid debts, the number and types of loans they have, how long the loans have been open and available, bill payment history, and how much credit is being used. So they talk about that. Um, they try to say that it has less to do with the individual behaviors, but then later on down in the article, they actually discuss about how it basically it's tied back to individual behaviors, a lack of not paying stuff back. And I think that again this goes back to the fact of that's the responsibility of their families to teach them how to gain appropriate credit at the right age. Like
Mm-hmm.
my parents didn't walk me through how to get a good credit score. Guess what I used? I used Google. I figured that out. I had to take initiative to go, okay, I wanted to better my life, so I turned to a public resource to be able to figure it out. So stuff like this honestly tries to guilt trip everybody into making people feel like they are holding the black community back. But this honestly makes it sound like they don't believe in the black community to be able to be competent or capable.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to like when they were talking about voting rights, about how, uh, yeah, I know we all chuckle at that one, but
It's the
it
bigotry of low
basically,
expectations. The idea, like it. I think I've made the meme, uh, a couple iterations of the meme, or at least seen iterations of the meme. It's like when it's that still frame from Predator when Arnold and I think it's Carl Weatherly, like clasp hands. You just have that shot of their hands clasped. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you have those hands clasped, and over one arm is, you know, like white supremacists, and over the other arm is like progressives, and it's like believing that black people are inherently inferior.
Yeah. And it's true. And this is what these articles basically are saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically saying, well, everyone else has to take care of the black community and give them more resources and give them more help and everything else. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
they can do it. Like I know that, you know, I'm not going to say coddled to, because that inherently sounds negative, but like I think black people are very capable. I think white people are very capable. I think
Yeah.
any person can be very capable as long as they believe it. And again, stuff like this, all this does is it creates a soft, cushy like fallback for the black community. And I think that's wrong, because we should encourage them to achieve the American dream, which means pull yourself up by the bootstraps. I know that, who is it? What's her name?
I,
The representative, the one with the glasses,
that's like
the
a million people.
yeah, she's young. She was,
Oh, AOC, Alexandria
yeah. There we go.
Ocasio-Cortez.
I forgot her name already. Yeah,
She's got the
that's
last name
yeah.
Cortez. I don't know how she gets away with like trying to be progressive. I'm anti-colonization. Yeah, well, you're named after the guy who like colonized Central and South America.
Oh, we can't talk about other nations and their colonization, their imperialism. We can't do that. Remember, we have to forget that the Spanish were super imperialist just as much as England and France were.
I'm honestly all on board with Spanish colonialism. Like the conquistadors did nothing wrong. Like the human sacrifices will stop.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but there were some things that happened. But yeah, I mean, the spread of Catholicism and everything, I guess,
Based.
wasn't terrible. Um, but at the end of the day,
All my
yeah,
Catholic friends that
AOC's
listen are gonna be like, "Yeah,
the only thing that's memorable about AOC were the
mm-hmm.
boob memes that were going around about her. That, because that was about it.
The what memes? Wait, hold on. I'm
The memes about her boobs.
oh."
That's the only thing I remember. That's all I saw. Everything was about her boobs. Like that stupid
Megan, my
dance
mother
that
listens to this podcast.
I'm so sorry, John's mom. I apologize in advance. We're not re-recording Scott at the top, so we're just gonna have to live with that.
This is not what I expected to bring. This is not where I expected to go.
Well. Yeah. Anyways. Like, am I wrong though?
No,
Like,
there was a lot of
all,
memes. I still
there's
see
so
those
many.
memes with like Pepe the
Oh
Frog and
God.
all that.
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
Anyway, so AOC was big about
Mhm.
being against that term, like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, because I don't know
Mhm.
what basis she had for arguing that, but there's plenty of people out there who have come from low socioeconomic classes to being able to, you know, take care of themselves and have families and support themselves. So I think that,
Mhm.
yeah, and there's been plenty of people in the black community who've been able to do that. So I'm not quite sure why there's this has hung around so much, and I'm not sure why it wouldn't offend more of the black community, honestly.
Yeah. Um it's probably not well, it's almost certainly not conscious by most people, but there is an element of like in order for there to be a successful communist revolution, you do need like a class of people or a substantial portion of people that believe they are oppressed. Um, and in the United States, it's actually pretty hard because we're so wealthy. Like even our ridiculously hopelessly poor people have like smartphones. I did when I was working security for a dispensary. I can't. There had an outdoor outlet for some godforsaken reason. And every time I would do a lap around the building, I'd find homeless people charging their phones there. Um, so it's like these people have like these $1,000 devices, even if they're not using like even if they can't like they can only use Wi-Fi because they don't have cell service. They can go to like to anywhere to get Wi-Fi for free, so they have access to like anything that they need. Um,
Yeah.
so just the amount of wealth that we have in the United States, we're like that is the bottom tier. Is like you have maybe you don't have a place, but you got an iPhone.
Yeah.
Um, that's still better than like that if that's our floor for poverty, that like the floor for poverty elsewhere in the world is like you don't even have a dirt hut.
Yeah. Well, I think that people like to tune that
Mm-hmm.
out. There's no way that people don't know the fact
Mm-hmm.
of the status of other countries. Um, and it's at this point, it's just willful ignorance, or they're just
Yeah.
blinders, tunnel vision, and
Mm-hmm.
it's sad because I think that the people who really started this or perpetuating it are doing it because they're actually gaining wealth from it.
Yeah.
These are the people who like Black Lives Matter leaders
Yeah.
who found out there was a lot of like fraud
What's
and stuff going
what's
on.
her name? Something colors, but it's not spelled like the word colors. It's like Patricia Colors, Patrice Colors, something like that. Yeah, no, the it's kind of you have to be careful when you say Black Lives Matter though, because there was like one organization. Although this is a
Yeah.
crazy story from 2020. The 2020 summer. I don't think we're allowed to call them riots. So Summer of Love is what I've heard a lot of other YouTubers call them. The 2020 Summer of Love. During that, there was a story where Apple and I think it was GoFundMe removed a Black Lives Matter organization like from the donation like from like their donation list because this organization what it did was it was taking donations. It called itself Black Lives Matter. It was taking donations and it was using those donations to help like build law enforcement, um, black community relationships, right? Like to make those
Hmm.
good and to like facilitate a positive and meaningful communication between black Americans and their law enforcement. I think it was in like Central or South California. Um, but this was removed from like GoFundMe, and I think Apple stopped donating to them, and they started donating to Colors Black Lives Matter, which just never really donated a lot of money and ended up spending a lot of it on property, like $1 million. I think they bought like what six several $1 million properties, like or it was like one $6 million property. I forget exactly
Something
what
like
it
that.
was.
Yeah. But you know, stuff like that. And I think that is where a lot of white Americans struggle
Mm-hmm.
when they look at this, is because it almost feels like we just end up still always being the problem or the bad guy in every single situation. And honestly, when you look at the data, a lot of it actually goes more, there's a more black on black crime. They try
Mm-hmm.
to ignite things and by pulling a very small subset of data and showing it off like it represents as the whole.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was showing you earlier on the NAACP site, the fact that for one, let's point out that they do a terrible job of actually citing their sources. Anybody can go look at naacp.org, and they just list all of these percentages and these statistics, but they very rarely actually cite their sources. They may vaguely refer to them, um, but honestly, so like what I was pointing out to you earlier, the
Mm-hmm.
fact that they go ahead and they say the number of people shot to death by the police in the United States from 2017 to 2020 by race. But if people actually look and notice, the data that they use, the graph, is actually only about Los Angeles. And that kind of misrepresentation is exactly what we see a lot of when there's articles published or there's news broadcasts or anything like that. When they actually do cite sources, it's
That's under the
usually
public, or that's under the heading public perception of police brutality and racial bias in the criminal justice system. Is that correct?
yeah,
Is
yeah,
that
and
graph? Okay.
it cites yeah, cites a source as Statista, which I mean it is on there and it is used, but again, it is only for Los Angeles, and so it looks very inflammatory, but in reality, it is not indicative of the nation as a whole. Because when you look at the nation as a whole for statistics in regards to police incidences with Black Americans. Let me. Um, so when we look at it, apparently the African American community is very vocal that they receive unfair or undue attention from law enforcement and that they are met with police brutality on a higher level. So when we actually look at the data, you can see that there are quite a few interactions between the police and the Black community. But if you actually look, so for one, there is a kind of looking over it. Um, yeah, so one of the articles I saw being used repetitively by a couple of different sites was the Violent Victimization by Race or Hispanic Origin, 2008 to 2021. And so if you look at it, it's actually seeing a decline. Now, it's not justifying it. It's not saying that it's still right that it's happening at the rate that it is. But you can see that from 2008, it was up to around, their rating system is 31.7. So that it basically does like a per thousand persons above the age of 12. And so from 2008 to where it is now, it's at a rate of 18 in 2021, because that's how far the data goes. So there is a decrease. And I mean, I do agree that probably the push for body cams for police officers, I do believe that those things were a good move because I think
Oh yeah.
it did help
I
to keep
think
police officers accountable.
I think that all officers should have body cams, and all body cam footage of critical incidences should be released to the public so that they can be obtained by police activity on YouTube, and I can watch them for my own entertainment.
Yeah. Ooh, uh, yeah. I think that,
Mm-hmm.
and honestly, too, the body cam footage that I have seen has been warranted. Like, there have been some where it was obviously too much, and I
Mm-hmm.
have seen quite a few videos where the police have stepped over their bounds, like there have
Yeah.
been time and time again. But let me stipulate this: if a police officer approaches you and you decide to try to go for their gun, any normal, rational person, police officer or not, is going to use the correct amount of force to protect themselves. And if they feel like you are going to shoot them with their own gun, they're going to probably shoot you first.
I'm a
I'm
lawful.
going to,
Sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say
If,
I'm a lawful concealed carrier. If you go for my gun, you're dead. I don't like that. No, you're done. That's it. You.
right.
That's the last mistake you made.
Yeah.
Like,
So
don't do
I'm
that.
gonna put that out there. Yeah, I'm gonna put that out there. Or if you are if you are sizable, like if I feel like you are a threat to me based on your size, I'm gonna use the appropriate amount of force to keep you down so that I can get away safely. And I'm sorry, but no one's a perfect shot. They're not going to be able to shoot you. I've heard that argument. Oh, you should shoot them in the shoulder. You should shoot them in the leg.
There's a big
I'm
squirty
pretty
boy
sure.
in the leg called the femoral artery. If you nick that, they're dead in 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Well, no, I think they're dead in a minute. You have 30 seconds to put a good tourniquet on it.
yeah, yeah. Or stick your finger in and like try to,
Yeah.
you know, do something
You
to.
have less than a minute to stop the bleeding. And if you
Yeah,
fail, that person's dead. Like shooting the leg's nonsense.
yeah.
No, you're right about marksmanship. Other things about this stuff, there was a criminologist who was, my understanding, and I could be wrong about this, but my understanding is he was one of the most influential criminologists in the realm of like uh, in the realm of like African Americans and the justice system, like whether or not they're discriminated against. His name's Eric Stewart. I'm gonna say it because let's see. I believe his name is Eric Stewart. Um, and he just lost his job. I believe it was the University of Florida because he made his statistics up, like vast swaths of the data um, that his office. I forget exactly how it works. This is all coming from Aiden Paladin. She's a
Hmm.
fantastic video essayist on YouTube. Very, very clever. I really, really love like the way she breaks down like science and data and stuff. So highly recommend. I will link that video in the description. Um,
Yeah, and we'll make sure to link all the articles too that we're
yeah.
referencing because there are quite a few, and I want to make sure people really get to it.
Yeah.
What I want to point out
Hmm.
real quick about what we were talking about in regards to the violent victimization. Um, what I didn't like too is when I went under what they considered violent victimization,
Hmm.
they considered yelling to be victimization. They considered handcuffing to be victimization. Um, uh, Cursing was another one. And so I will say this. I think too that because we're kind of soft as a generation as a whole lately,
Hmm.
like we've seen our society kind of become soft. These things are not victimizations. I'm not saying that they're not nice. Like let's not. I'm not going to mince words here and say, oh, it's so nice that they're cursing. No, I'm not going to do that. Um, but grow some thicker skin. Like a cop cursing at you or yelling at you, yes, that person has a gun. Yes, that person has a certain amount of authority, but they also do have rules. And if they break those rules, you're going to be able to file a nice lawsuit and get a pretty penny because, I
Hmm.
mean, they do have to follow a set amount of rules. And as long as, and everyone pulls out their phones nowadays. So I'm sure there will be some semblance of video recording out there if a police officer screws up and does something he's not supposed to. So I just wanted to put that out there that maybe we do need to grow a thicker skin as a whole,
Yeah,
and
that's definitely.
get out of this mentality that oh he yelled at me I'm victimized. No,
Yeah.
stop it.
Well,
You know,
there's the victim mentality is super toxic regardless. Like even if you are a genuine victim of a situation, adopting that mentality literally just traps you in that victimhood, and makes it just impossible um, to move on. And that's just true in life in general. Like it doesn't even have to be race. Like um, if you ever like caught in a spot where it's like where you're down on your luck and you blame everyone else for your problems, like I like to blame the federal government for a lot of my problems, because they're responsible for a lot of my problems. Chiefly $5 a gallon premium gas.
but you
um
still have to live. But you still have to
yeah,
live
yeah,
and push yourself despite
yeah,
that. Like
yeah. I
and
can either
that's
just say boo-hoo, woe is me, gas shouldn't be $5 because it shouldn't. Don't vote for Biden. I can either sit here and go boohoo, woe is me, gas is $5 a gallon. How will the world should just bend over backwards to make it so that I'm comfortable, even though gas is $5 a gallon. Or I can well, yeah, so I can say all that, and then obviously the rest of the world's gonna go, what? No, stop being a baby. Like I've got my own
yeah.
problems too.
Better than having to ride a bike everywhere.
It's
Better
true.
than, I mean, well, riding a bike is very healthy. Let's
It's
not
good
get
for
me
you.
wrong. I do believe that transportation in many urban settings probably needs to be vastly changed. Um, because you can do that there. But yeah, it's better than having to walk or bike 20
Mm-hmm.
miles to get to work. Better than having to dig up your own well to get water. I mean, in general, the world is a far better place in regards to being able to access resources than it used to be.
Oh yeah.
And people just lose sight of that all the time. And I mean, I agree, like stuff sucks, but again,
Mm-hmm.
the whole idea too of keeping up with the Joneses is kind of part of the problem too. Everyone's on
Yeah.
Instagram, everyone's on social media,
Oh,
and
that's
everyone gets to see what
horrid. Yeah. I'm so
it's
glad
a
Meta deleted all my accounts.
it's probably very therapeutic because just like when you look at Instagram and you're like, oh, this
Mm-hmm.
person's in the Maldives or whatever else, and you want to you're constantly like, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. You're never just
Mm-hmm.
grateful or content, and that transcends races. I think everyone's experiencing that all the time now. Um, but yeah, it's that's not a singular race problem. It's
Mm-hmm.
everyone needs to understand though, like you are at where you're at right now and not everyone's going to cater to you just because you were born. Like, you need to get up and you need to figure it out.
Yeah. The
Now,
reason
do
I'm
things
not content is because Palmetto State Armory exists and I can't buy their entire catalog.
understandable, but you'll get there one day.
Yeah.
You'll manage it. It'll
Yeah.
happen. But the
Because
thing is,
instead of
like,
playing a victim and being like, boo hoo, woe is me, I don't have money, I'm going to be like, I want to better my life so that I can buy guns. And buy guns, I mean get married and have a family. And buy guns.
well, as long as you hide it from your wife, or your wife's a gun enthusiast too. But I'm sure that that's going to be the latter option's what you're going to probably do anyways. Because
Yeah. I'd like
yeah,
to think I'm a good fellow.
no, I'm not saying, I wasn't saying that. I was saying, like, you'd probably choose a wife that is a gun enthusiast versus one that you would have to hide your gun purchases from.
At
Your
least one
priorities
that
would
like
be.
understands that it's my hobby. She doesn't have to be
That's true.
like as into guns as I am. I'm not actually that worried about it. Which my only thing is she's got to be at least like willing to learn how to use a handgun and maybe a long gun at home in case something ever happens and I'm not around, so she can protect herself and our children. But anyway, we're digressing.
Oh no, I'm using this as a shameless plug to try
Okay.
to get you a girlfriend. So
Oh,
just
okay.
the girls, that ladies, that John is very available and is a good Lutheran man who likes guns. So if
Okay.
any of you ladies are interested, you can hit him up.
Oh,
Um, shameless plug over.
all right.
Okay, so moving on. So honestly, like, we left the meat of everything to the last 15 minutes, which isn't bad. Um, crime in general. So
Mm-hmm.
we're a lot of the time when police brutality is a big one, but then they also go back to crime in general, that the level of crime committed against Black people is higher, which I wouldn't necessarily say is the case, because the Black community only accounts for 13% of the population. So
Mm-hmm.
naturally, white people are going to experience more crime logically. But we'll take a look at the fact too that the data actually
Mm-hmm.
shows that a greater number of violent incidences occur with white victims are committed by white offenders. And then the next part of the data shows too that more violent incidences with Black victims include or involve Black offenders,
I'm proud
which
of you for not
kind
going
of,
to the 55 and accidentally
yeah.
getting us banned.
Yeah, it's almost like a bad habit. Well, it's almost like a habit that you have to break out of. Just
Yeah.
keep looking at the data. Um, and so I think that this alone dispels the idea that Black people are under attack from white people. It's the data
Mm-hmm.
shows that the Black community is its own worst enemy in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem we see is that they keep pushing away personal accountability and instead always go directly to policy change.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem, is like that instant veer off course. And they're like, oh, policy change. No policy is going to hit people in their moral compass. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's been very, the war on drugs showed that
Mm-hmm.
no matter what you did, people were still going to access drugs. People were still going to take drugs. Um, prohibition showed that people, if they want alcohol, they're going to get alcohol.
Yeah.
And so it's never going to
It's me. I
change
want alcohol.
people. Oh, well. Oh, actually, a martini sounds pretty good right now.
I haven't had as much money lately because my current job doesn't pay the best, but I really just want to get some good mead. I want to start making my own mead. So take that,
That's a
government.
good hobby.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just, you just put like strawberries and honey and water, and then you mix it with some alcohol yeast, and then you just kind of wait for 2 months. Then ding, mead.
You're going to start the mead running
Yeah.
trade, huh? Just like the moonshiners.
Oh,
Maybe the mead
if
runners.
if I have my way and I turn this podcast into a full business, I will be selling mead.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
That's a very rounded, rounded base. I'm a gun enthusiast, podcast host, and mead creator. That'd
Yeah.
be great. See, look, that great husband resume there.
Oh gosh, again. I'm flattered, but
Sorry.
again.
Sorry.
Mm,
What? I've been talking to you for years.
that's
You
true.
know.
We do go way
We're,
back. Yeah.
yeah.
It, I will say, to be charitable to any potential leftist or progressive that listens to this podcast, I am perfectly willing to admit that um the Black American culture of today, that and it's not really the Black American culture, it's the Black urban American culture, because it's once you leave cities and get into rural America, um the a lot of that culture just disappears, and the rural blacks are Black Americans are like the same as white Black American or rural white
White
Americans.
white black American.
Oh gosh, yeah, just panda Americans. Just
Panda. I like
heaven's
that.
sake.
I've been a Panda Americans.
A
Oh
panda
gosh.
American. Anyway, yeah, the cultural gap actually starts to narrow once you get into rural America, between the races. Um, so it is almost exclusively an urban Black American thing, and I am perfectly willing to admit that that today's culture is a product of past, like, actual systemic racism. Systems, like government systems, created these problems. I'm totally willing to admit that. um my problem is we've been for decades been trying to use government systems to dig them out of it, and it just isn't working. Right? We have,
Mm.
like, Black Americans right now, they get deferred treatment in like enrollment. Like, you can borderline fail the what is it, the LSAT, the LSAT? What are those things? It's been so long since high school that I don't remember all those tests.
Yeah, there's SATs and then there's ACTs.
ACTs, thank you.
So
I think the LSAT
there's
might be
different tests for
I think
different
the
areas.
LSAT might be an experimental light machine gun.
I can
Anyway,
see how you I can see how you completed the two. It's
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah, experimental light machine gun.
Experimental testing. I mean,
Yeah,
does it
yeah,
really determine the intelligence level
yeah.
of a or
But
competency level?
you can
Anyways,
borderline fail these, like, college placement tests. But if you're a Black American, um, at least until recently with some SCOTUS rulings, that means you could still get accepted to, like, Harvard, right? Where it's like me. I mean, part of this is because I was not a studious kid. Um, if my mom does listen to this podcast, she's gonna be like, "Yeah, that's right, you idiot." I was not a studious kid. I just did not care about uh, studying, so I wouldn't. My scores wouldn't get me in Harvard. But again, like, kids with the scores that I would get on the SAT, ACT, if they were Black, would get into Harvard or Princeton or Yale or whatever. Meanwhile, and counterintuitively, Asians are actually the most discriminated against in this area, which is weird. You'd think it'd be white people, but no, because they're so studious, and they're so good at, like, focusing and being disciplined and actually learning. Even when they get really, like, have to basically get a perfect score to get in. So there are Black privileges in this country that we
it's
have through policy, and it's failing them. It's not helping. Um, Crime rates are
yeah,
still high among the Black community. As you said, it's not like white people are going out there and killing or hurting other Black people. It's themselves. They're doing it. It's their community.
yeah. Well, it all really, and it's interesting that you pointed out the Asian Americans because actually Thomas Sowell in his book Intellectuals and Race went into that if you actually started including Asian Americans in those numbers, which typically the polls don't do that, it completely obliterates their arguments about
Mm-hmm.
it being a white versus Black thing. Asian Americans happen to be discriminated against in a lot of sectors, not just in education, but in like the job sphere, because they are, um, they're really intelligent, but they represent a very small percentage of the population, and so they end up being discriminated against for a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So interesting that you brought that up. But yeah, back to what you're saying, it really is about the policy change mentality versus the personal accountability mentality. Like, we have to shift it from saying, well, it's this and this needs to change and this needs to change. No, it needs to be Black families. And that's what I will say. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the source of a lot of the problems is
Right.
the breakdown of the nuclear Black family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Fatherlessness in general for any race is a problem right now. But I
Yeah.
will say that there have been numerous studies that have shown that the fatherlessness rate in Black households is far higher
It's like
than
something like it
other.
like 70%, I think.
Yeah, it's gone up drastically
It's
since like
it's insane, and
2008.
that's part of and like I said, I'm willing to admit past systems. Actually, this is one that you could consider is still in place. Like the way our welfare system works, it basically incentivizes single motherhood. Like it pays out money to women who have kids that are single. So it's like, oh, I can get paid by the government for just having kids and not being married. Okay. So some people do
Well,
that, regardless of their race.
yep,
Um,
plenty of white dependas on there too.
oh yeah,
So
absolutely. Um,
yeah,
and it's just as bad and wrong. For
yeah,
yeah, it's not a good policy. It was well meaning. It was intended to help women who it was the welfare was originally intended to help widows, but they expanded
yep.
it to
From the war.
yeah, and that's
Yeah,
like if anybody's going to get welfare, that's the people. Those are the people that should get welfare, like soldiers and the families of soldiers who lost their husband and father. Um,
yeah. No, I agree. Um,
yeah.
but it really and this is so this last poll that I'm going to reference is the one that I'm going to end on,
Mm-hmm.
at least for what I really wanted to talk about, which was that Pew Research Center polled those who were discussing. I guess it's from the Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy uh, research survey of U.S.
Mm-hmm.
adults conducted, and it was in April of 2023, so it's recent.
Oh wow.
58% of Americans who say efforts to ensure racial equality haven't gone far enough say it's unlikely there will be equality in their lifetime. And I guess this is my question. What is determined as equality? Like,
Yeah,
that
we.
question is so vague and so
Mm-hmm.
open that honestly, I don't know these people, the ones who say 58% of the people, who these 58%, what do they say or what do they think equality means?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be interested if our people who are tuning in could, comment about what if they're one of this 58%, what they mean by this. Because frankly, we're never going to really achieve anything positive until we understand this, because I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I see Black Americans and white Americans as having the same rights and privileges at this point. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if not, in my mind, if not Black Americans getting more, because more people feel like they need more to even reach baseline for equality, and that's the problem. It how are you saying that a Black, you know, juvenile getting a lower score qualifies them to go to a college as a white kid who got a higher score? How do you justify that and say that's equality? And I guess that's where I'm trying to understand, and I think that's where a lot of people are confused. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd be interested in hearing their responses on that.
Yeah. We were talking about that before the show. I made the distinction between material equality and equality before the like equal treatment before the law. Um, and you actually, I think that's a good point that um, when it like that what equality in like the appropriate context when these questions are asked isn't actually like given. So if you just go up to somebody and say, "Hey, do you believe in equality?" and people are just gonna go, "Yeah," because they're not gonna think about it. Like they're just like equal is good. That's just kind of how most people think. And to some people, probably most actually, to them when they think equal, they probably think of like equal treatment before the law. Because I have a feeling if you go, oh, so like, should we make sure that everyone has, like, let's say there's 1 billion tons of copper on the planet. Um, should we divide that 1 billion tons of copper evenly among the 8 billion human beings on the planet?
Mm-hmm.
Do like, how far do we take material equality, right? So I don't think, I think that most people probably do really just believe in like, um, more equality before the law, and probably just narrowing the income gap, not like getting rid of it, but just narrowing it, which I think there are ways to do that organically without the government. So I have no problem with that.
I don't think that would necessarily be as easy as everyone thinks, though, because
Mm-hmm.
again, you have to appeal to people to their core. Like
Yeah.
you can, they have to want to receive an education. They have to actually want
Yeah.
to put forth the effort to receive that education to be qualified to do a job that earns the equal or greater amount than someone of a different race. And that is where you get to individual choices, and that's not that no policy change is going to be able to affect that at all. that
Yeah.
that goes down to individual choice, personal accountability. So people have to think about that. Like, where do you see yourself? Are you actually sitting down and raising your kids to see their futures and what they want and how to attain that? And that again, that's another issue that transcends race households everywhere. It doesn't matter about white, black, Hispanic. Are you raising your kids to actually look at their life and plan for it effectively? And that's up to them. So, um, but yeah, I'm sorry I cut in, but I apologize about that.
No, you're good. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. So, thank you guys so much for coming to the canceling of Essence of Alexandria, where we fixed racism. We did it, guys. Racism's no more. We defeated it. So
I
go
really wish
ahead.
we could, though.
Seriously. So go ahead and quick reminder one more time to leave a like and a comment. Leave a like for ending racism and a comment for ending racism. And subscribe to the channel on YouTube and Rumble for ending racism. I don't know. I probably need to stop with that joke. Thank you guys so much for listening. You have a wonderful day. God bless.